Hello, hello, hello! Andrew here. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how Starlink completely changes the game in regards to Tesla versus Apple. When I say the words Apple versus Tesla, likely one of two things will come to mind. Number one, if you're not an investor, you might be thinking Apple's a phone company and Tesla's an auto company. There's no such thing as a versus here because they're not even competitors. And number two, if you are an investor and you listen to the mainstream media, you might be thinking, even with this recent Tesla run-up, Apple is still twice the company. When Apple actually finishes their Project Titan car and releases a real EV of their own, they are going to eat Tesla for lunch. And besides that, Apple profits come from data and software. Tesla makes EVs and solar. So far, the consensus in the media is that Apple will be disrupting Tesla, and you can find no shortage of articles or interviews that discuss this. And I don't even blame the finance media. When you talk about X company versus Y company, typically you're going to believe that X company is going to be the disruptor of Y company just because subconsciously the order. And people put Apple first. Apple's had Project Titan for a long time. They've got a huge following. And let's face it, there are a lot of fanboys out there. What if I was to tell you a secret, though, that nobody is talking about? And I mean nobody. Come a little closer.
Starlink changes everything.
It changes everything so much that, noticed, I titled the episode Tesla versus Apple and not the other way around. Now, if I've piqued your interest, let's dig into it. For us to take a look at what it would actually take to disrupt Apple as a company, let's start by looking at their financial statement. You can see here that Apple in the last 3 months made $83 million in the last 3 months, of which $18 million was based off of services. And if we want a breakdown of what the products that they sold were, well, we can find that down here a little bit lower, and we can find that the iPhone was worth $38 million of that total $83 million. When you break this apart and you want to say exactly what are you going after and what market are you trying to hit when you're looking at Apple, that means that you're looking at trying to tackle service revenue and you're trying to tackle iPhone revenue. The two of those together equals 68.5% of all of Apple's profits, of all of Apple's sales as a whole. It's based around the iPhone and it's based around the services. That's the reality of what Apple is as a company. That doesn't mean their M1 Mac Minis aren't important. That doesn't mean their MacBook Airs aren't important. But if you're going to disrupt Apple, you're going to have to tackle those two markets because those are the biggest moats. Now, if you're going to take a look at what Apple does that gives them such a position of strength in those two markets, well, they design and manufacture their own hardware. This is evident within their M1 lineup. They do a fantastic job of doing their own infrastructure when it comes to chip setups and actually designing their own hardware. It's a big deal. And when it comes down to services, it's a big deal because they've created an ecosystem that lures you in. They've got software that's easy, it's intuitive to use. It's a big deal. Once you're involved and you've got it, they make it so much easier just to add on another Apple product or just to go ahead and stay with Apple as opposed to having to leave the Apple ecosystem. They have their own iOS and their own App Store where you get other applications from other developers and Apple gets a cut just because it has to go through their iOS. They develop Siri, which, to be real, is a form of artificial intelligence, which means, yes, Apple is an AI company. Apple also benefits from a symbiotic relationship when it comes to cell phone carriers. This means that they don't have to spend the R&D to come up with the next version, 4G to 5G. They've just got to have the receiver. They don't need to have the transmitter. Their products are available to be used by 66% of all the world's population. That's a big deal. That's like 4 billion people that they have access to sell their products to. And that's just because in the rest of the world, besides that last third, isn't accessible to anybody who has internet or cell service. So everybody that has access, you can sell an Apple product to. And lastly, they have a ton of cash that they're sitting on. They have so much cash that they pay dividends. Now that's quite a resume. So at this point in time, you might be thinking, psh, Apple is such a powerhouse company, there's no way they can't take on Tesla and just grind them into the dirt. But let's take a closer look at Tesla. First off, Tesla designs and manufactures their own hardware. And they've been called industry leading by more than one person. And it's been touted that some of their equipment, like say their video graphics cards and say their chipsets for controlling, Dojo, are literally years ahead of anybody else in the market. Solely because they designed it from a first principles mindset in order to take over and do what they need to do. Number two, Tesla does design their own software. Guess what? They have an app. And that app controls the car, controls the solar, controls the power wall that you install for your house. It's pretty much all inclusive. And yes, Tesla in their cars already have their own platform. And you can already go download apps within their store. But guess what? Those apps are free. Next up, Tesla has a better AI division than Apple does. They've already been working on full self-driving for quite a long time. That's an AI problem. They have the best AI engineers in the entire world working at Tesla. And they're going to be expanding from working on just transportation problems to making full industrial robots, things that you'll find common in your own household. It won't be too long, and we'll all have a Tesla AI robot in our own household cleaning up after ourselves. Tesla has experience building infrastructure from the ground up. And when comparing symbiotic relationships like Apple and Verizon or Apple and AT&T, it don't get more symbiotic than having the same CEO between SpaceX and Tesla. This means that Tesla is uniquely positioned to go ahead and develop towers individually all the way across the world, which are individually powered, don't need to be connected electrically to the grid, which would be able to communicate with Starlink satellites and be able to provide their own service anywhere in the world within the range of that tower. They could be isolated completely outside of the electrical grid or completely outside of the rest of the data grid. And now I bet that got your gears turning. If Tesla starts placing individual towers around the world that link up to Starlink satellites and create what I'm going to call is a satellite phone system, the addressable market would be 33% of the entire human population, and that's before you actually touch into Apple's market space. This means that when you take away young people and old people across the world, your addressable market is already 2 billion in size. And yes, just like Apple, Tesla has a lot of cash. The difference is Tesla could pay off all of their debt right now, where Apple can't. This means that Tesla can put more money into R&D and creating an infrastructure than Apple physically can. They could build an entirely new infrastructure from the ground up if that's what it took to go ahead and disrupt Apple. And since now I've said the word satellite phone, you have a glimpse into my head as to how Tesla is going to destroy Apple. Basically, we will have sat phones in the future, starting in 2025 to 2040. Sometime between then, the entire world is going to transition to satellite phone networks. This is going to be as disruptive as when we went from a cell phone from a rotary. It's going to completely wipe out the entire grid as we know it. Companies are going to get laid bare into waste, and people are going to be left behind holding the bags. In this case, the satellite phones will be so much better because you'll be able to use them anywhere in the world. And if we take a look at what it actually takes right now, physically right now, to go ahead and to create such a network, we can look no farther than the current cell phone towers we have and actually see how they operate. So I'm going to go ahead and show some clips here from a guy named MrMobile, Mike Fisher, and I'm going to paraphrase one of his great videos that you can actually go check up on here in the description that'll show you how a cell phone tower operates. Paraphrasing, basically there's huge bundles of data cables that come to each tower and connect that tower to the internet. And then there are huge bundles of power lines that are connected as well to make certain that this cell phone tower is already connected to the electrical grid. And in the case of electrical failure, there's huge walls of lead acid batteries that are used as backups. Can you believe I just said that out loud? Lead acid batteries that are used as backups. And typically they're attached to things like diesel generators in case power goes out for more than 10 to 12 hours. That's how when power goes out, you still maintain cell phone service. Well, let's think about Tesla creating their own tower. Do they need to be connected to a grid? No. Why? Because they have solar panels. Do they need to go ahead and use lead acid batteries? No, because they have better technology. They'll just put a couple of power packs in there. Do they need to go ahead and use generators? Why would they? When they've got a mega pack, you can just discharge the battery and you'll be fine. They'll create more than enough power to run it for indefinitely on its own power. It won't need to be connected to anything. And the beauty of this is we already have confirmation from Elon Musk in interviews that we can use Starlink right now as a backup for cell phone data. We already have it. So we know it's coming.
Just, if people have cellular stations in remote regions, using Starlink for data backhaul to their network can be a very cost-effective way of doing data backhaul.
This would effectively mean you could take that structure and place it anywhere in the world in order to execute your network. Anywhere. You wouldn't be limited by where your grid connectivity is of electricity already, or where your internet connectivity is already. The Buddhists out in the Himalayas could have it just because you pop one tower over there and now all of a sudden you have service in the mountains. That's how simple this is. So if you're sitting back and wondering, hey Andy, you're still going to need a spot to go ahead and connect all that data that's in this satellite system to go ahead and get it back to the current internet system you have now until you completely transition to this other. Well, you've got, 1,600 superchargers stations in America alone that you can go ahead and make any one of those just their own stand-up tower network as it is right now. I mean, that's the beginning of your infrastructure right there. Just put the towers where the superchargers are. And now all of a sudden you have the infrastructure. You have the hard lines that get back into the internet. And I want to note that this does not include SpaceX's acquisition of a company named Swarm and all the technologies that come with them. And for more information, I'm going to link down to a Mike on Space video because the technology that's coming is going to blow your mind. And if you don't believe me that Tesla is going to be moving down this path, then let me give you 3 reasons that prove that they are. Take a look at the Model S, the new refreshed Plaid, and guess what you'll find? Screens in the back. Internet connectivity that you already can sign up for in your car. And Tesla hardware that's better than most gaming computers. Now, if I've even got you thinking that this is a possibility at all, let's take a look at some back-of-the-napkin math in order to decide what our future could look like as a Tesla investor. First of all, remember, we talked earlier that Apple, his accessible cell service is about 66%. That's what cell service actually comes in contact with all of humanity. Now, Apple's market share is only 27%. It's just under. It's 26.75%. If you take a population of the world about 7.75 billion, and you take out all of the young people and all of the old people who are physically too old to have their own cell phone devices and actually be utilizing the network, when you add up the math, that means that Apple right now has about 1.16 billion, and yes, that's billion with a B, users around the entire world. That's a huge market. But remember, only 2/3 of all humanity actually have access to cell service. What changes when we go and we start looking at satellite service instead, and we start this infrastructure up from 2025 to 2040? What does it look like Tesla's opportunities are? Well, the reality is sat service is going to be available for the remainder of the 33%. Tesla's market share, there's going to be nobody else to compete with them that's going to be cost competitive. The symbiotic relationship, we could be under one company by then. If you take the same amount of people in the world, removing the young and the old, you have an addressable market of 2.17 billion users. That means that right there alone, off the same cost structure, that means that Tesla's market share, without touching Apple's market share at all, will be 1.87 times larger than Apple's. That equates to approximately an additional $3.1 trillion. That's trillion with a T. $3.1 trillion additional onto Tesla's market cap. This is absolutely huge. That's without addressing Apple's market. And I want to just ask you a question. If you have a choice of having a cell phone tower or a cell phone that's made by Apple, what you're used to every single day, or the chance to have a satellite phone that's usable anywhere in the world, not just on T-Mobile, not just on Verizon, not just on AT&T, but anywhere in the world, and possibly off-world if we start having intercontinental, or not intercontinental, but say trips to, say, some hotel up in the lower atmosphere. Could be usable anywhere. Would you rather have that phone, especially if it's already controlling your solar, your car, your transportation, possibly your HVAC, definitely your backup power generation and your energy arbitrage? Which one are you going to choose? You're going to choose the all-integrated system, literally vertically integrated system, and you're going to choose Tesla. That's just the way it's going to be. It's not even going to be a contest anymore. It's like saying that people who hold on to Blackberries in 2021, that's really something people can do. No, this is the beginning of the end of Apple. So in conclusion, I know some of the things that I'm talking about sound like they're pie in the sky. But set a calendar reminder for 2040 and come back here afterwards and tell me that I'm not right. That we won't have satellite phone service, and that Tesla won't be at least $3.5 trillion larger than what it is today. Chances are they're going to be the leader in that kind of service, and not only will they be the leader, but I'm going to bet that as opposed to Tesla being a fraction of Apple's value, it's going to be the other way around. Apple will be a fraction of Tesla's value, and that's if Apple still exists in the year 2040. And nobody's talking about this right now. Nobody. Well, that about wraps up today's episode. What I want to know, though, is how you feel about Starlink changing the whole dynamic of the Tesla versus Apple conversation. Tell me about it down in the comments below. And while you're down there, make certain you hit that thumbs up button, click that subscribe button, and consider sharing this with one of your friends. It really does help out the channel. And make sure you hit that notification bell so that way you stay in tune with all of our most recent videos. Thanks for joining us today. Here at the Dad Manual, we produce videos twice every single week. If you like this video, then come check out this one over here on the side. In this video, we go ahead and talk about Starlink FAQs. And until next time, I'm Andrew Sherman. This is the Dad Manual, and remember, failure isn't bad. Failure to try and learn is. Have a good one.